Welcome the chosen ones. You can't curse anything that sprang from heaven's code, but an angel probably said it to you as you defied death again. Let's make this clear. If spiritual battle were a video game, you would be the bug. They can't fix everything every time the Dark Coven believed they had turned off your destiny. The lights turned back on, and they were brighter, stronger, and faster than heavenly Wi-Fi. They want to hurt you not because you're weak, but because you are evidence that their whole system is losing power. They've attempted psychological warfare, stealing energy, sabotaging ancestors, and even messing with money, but nothing worked. You not only survived, but you did it with elegance and a little bit of a holy side-eye. Coven activity isn't just a story, it's a cold, hard truth. It is real. Written down in old writings, spiritual traditions from throughout the world, and even in secret current experiments, there are these shadow networks. And they're not simply putting spells on candles. They're starting full-blown assaults against souls. But what happens when they meet someone whose source code has a built-in firewall? Someone whose soul arrived with return to sender already turned on. Someone who is highly present tends to mess up their own traditions. That's you. And now they're scared. They can't kill you. They can't keep what they took. And they can't stop what's coming next, that's for sure. So get your spiritual popcorn and remain here. What I'm going to tell you will not only explain why they are afraid of you, but also why they will never be able to get over crossing you. Let's get started. First of all, you're not merely safe. You are programmed to come back to life. They didn't simply not kill you. What? They truly didn't get that you're not like everyone else. You were made to come back again and again. You don't simply live. Every time they attempt to break you, you become stronger. They thought you would break, fold, fall apart, or vanish when they came for you. But what they found was a heavenly mechanism that turned agony into strength. You're not merely a person going through trauma. You have a contract with your soul. While they were sending spiritual bullets, curses, lies, setups, and treachery your way, every attack you went through gave you a type of spiritual upgrade they never saw coming. They didn't know they were setting off a higher procedure that was etched into your soul before you were even created. That's why every time someone tried to figure you out, you become more focused on your objective. You learn things that can't be taught but can only be acquired every time you survived an ambush. They believed they were ending something, but they were really starting something. A part of you that no magic, lie, or plan can get to. They are scared of this because they want to be in charge, but you have become entirely unpredictable. It's impossible to monitor your energy. No one can copy your strength. And the way you shine, that is heavenly light bouncing off of every conflict you fought and survived. They don't understand how you're still standing. They don't get how you can lose everything and yet get up without being angry. They don't see why their assaults just make you more focused, more grounded, and more fortunate. It's because your soul has the power to heal itself. The more they attempt to murder you, the more they wake up your secret codes. It's not chance. It's a plan from God. They didn't realize how strong the power was. They were going after someone. But they didn't know that you're more than simply a person. You are a divine assignment that is covered in flesh. That's why nothing they do goes as planned. You're evidence that the selected ones don't merely bounce back. They bounce higher. And now they're scared to watch. I'm not sure how you're still here, still dazzling, and yet unshaken. Because some souls don't want to be shattered. Some people are here to change history. Second, your assets are quantum. That's why they can't keep them. They felt they could grab what was yours and run with it. Your money, your ideas, your inheritance, your prospects. Whatever appeared valuable in the tangible. They assumed if they stopped it, stole it, or misdirected it, you'd be left with nothing. But what they didn't grasp is that your riches was never simply material. Your genuine assets are coded into your energy, your purpose, your harmony with divine timing. That's why they couldn't hang on to what they sought to steal. Every stolen blessing became poison in their hands because it was never tuned to their spirit. What people don't comprehend is this. The blessings that accompany a selected one are encoded. Your abundance isn't merely what you have in the bank. It's encoded in your frequency. Your energy draws heavenly resources, heavenly thoughts, heavenly aid. Even if they empty your account, block your advancements, or bluff their way into a job designed for you, it doesn't stay. Why? Because you are the source of the gift. You carry the divine blueprint. When you go away, the favorite departs with you. That's what scares them the most. Not that you lost anything, but that you keep getting even more after the loss. You don't remain broke. You don't remain blocked. You don't remain down. You reset, recalibrate, and the cosmos starts moving things back in your favor. Sometimes even better than before. Not because you're fortunate, but because your spiritual economy doesn't rely on physical situations. You function in a higher world. They mismanaged your possessions because they assumed they were stealing from a real individual. They didn't realize they were mishandling a chosen one's inheritance, something having heavenly protection surrounding it. That's why nothing they stole provided them comfort. That's why it began breaking down, generating pandemonium and backfiring. That prosperity wasn't only for you. It was allocated to you. And when something allocated becomes abused, the spiritual repercussions are terrible. You are the multiplier, the carrier, the reason why things thrive. That's why they couldn't keep what they took. And now they have to watch you rise again, with everything they sought to steal from you coming back, bigger and stronger than before. 3. The Coven didn't fear you at first. They dreaded what you'd recall. They didn't start out fearing you. In fact, at the beginning, they were very convinced that they had you wrapped around their finger. Easy to modify, easy to distract, easy to control. What worried them wasn't your presence. It was the moment they recognized you were beginning to recall who you truly are. That changed the moment your soul began waking up and rejecting everything phony around you. That's what sent terror through their system. These individuals, these covens, these spiritual manipulators, whatever shape they came in, understood from the beginning that if you ever completely stepped into your truth, their hold over you would disintegrate. That's why they kept you in survival mode, had you questioning yourself, kept you occupied with drama, betrayals, addictions, cycles of rejection. They fed you falsehoods so thick you nearly forgot you were king. But the instant your memory began to return, the power dynamic reversed. You began asking deeper questions. You began feeling sickened by the things that used to distract you. You started cutting off energy that felt weighty. That's not coincidence. That's called activation. And when a selected one activates, dark forces lose their control. The tricks stop working. The deception falls flat. The illusion crumbles. The Coven didn't fear your voice. They dreaded your lucidity. Because when you see through the spell, you no longer play by their rules. You don't engage in the phony alliances that traumatize, the emotional blackmail you unhook, and your unplugging has a ripple effect that destabilizes the whole system they designed to keep you hooked. You remembering who you are is spiritual warfare in itself. Because with that memory comes access. Access to spiritual instruments, access to ancestral power, access to divine downloads that undermine their whole organization. That's why they attempted to block your waking with fear, bewilderment, even threats. But it was already too late. Once a chosen one recalls, there's no turning back. And now they're watching you move differently, speak differently, live differently, because you finally woke up. And in doing so, you demolished everything they built on your quiet, your ignorance, and your agony. Now they're afraid not of your power, but of what you may do with your memories. Number 4. Their spells didn't fail. They backfired. They believed they were being smart, executing rituals, casting spells, summoning energy to alter your path, obstruct your blessings, or pull you into turmoil. But what they didn't account for is spiritual law. They didn't comprehend that when a chosen one is involved, everything done in darkness ultimately boomerangs back with interest. They open doors. Yes, but they open them in your name. Not knowing your name carries heavenly power. And because of it, the energy they released couldn't affect you. It looked for you, found you shielded, and snapped back to the center like a curse with a built-in GPS. This wasn't merely an unsuccessful strike. It was a spiritual setup they walked themselves into. The reason it backfired wasn't because you evaded it. It's because your energy field rejected it altogether. Your frequency is associated with truth, with source, with high-level divine protocols. You don't vibrate low enough to accept their energy, even when it's purposely aimed at you. That's why nothing stuck. That's why you continued prospering as their lives started to slowly crumble. Every time they lied on your name, attempted to hinder your journey, or sent anything terrible your way, it cost them spiritually. Because selected ones aren't simply protected, they're reflections. Whatever is delivered to them reflects back with full openness. Their own ambitions are emphasized in your presence. That's why people start losing their heads after crossing you. That's why uncertainty, disease, loss, and solitude struck them not long after they attempted to alter your destiny. It's not vengeance. It's heavenly reciprocity. They thought you didn't realize what was occurring. But spiritual warfare doesn't necessarily require your awareness to unleash justice. Your higher self watched everything and made movements behind the scenes. And now they're dealing with repercussions. They never prepared for what they wanted to trap you with. They ended up trapping them in the gloom they sent. Not simply missed you. It went back and asked the people who called it for money. They toyed with forces they didn't comprehend. And you, simply by being united with truth, become the cause for their own collapse. That's the power of a chosen one. You don't fight back. Your energy does it for you. Number 5. Your spiritual immunity revealed their decay. You didn't come into their lives to fight, dispute, or tear someone down. But your sheer presence began doing something they couldn't explain or hide from without even trying. You uncovered what was festering under their surface, the falsehoods they disguised with charm, the jealousy they concealed with bogus praise, the anger they hid behind forced smiles. It all began rising when you showed up. And the reality is it had nothing to do with what you said. It was merely your enthusiasm that caused the masks fall off. That's the thing with selected ones. You carry a frequency that doesn't entertain lie. You don't have to utter a word for others to feel uncomfortable in your company. Your spiritual immunity, your reluctance to bear what doesn't belong to you, agitates the devils they've learned to live with. Your tranquility meets their pandemonium. Your development causes their stagnation, and your illumination. It doesn't simply glow. It implies they wanted you to be the issue. They attempted to flip the script, make you appear insane. Too sensitive, too intense. But what truly occurred is that your soul entered the room and initiated a spiritual audit. Suddenly, their enthusiasm couldn't sit right. Their goals couldn't remain secret. Their unresolved wounds were coming to the surface. And since you wouldn't play into their games or entertain their projections, they began behaving like you were the one bringing the storm. But you weren't the storm. You were the mirror. And that's why they despised you without explanation, why they turned on you without notice. Because gazing at you meant seeing everything in themselves. They've refused to heal. It wasn't your words that hurt deep. It was your alignment, your progress, your unwillingness to shrink to make them comfortable. You didn't destroy them. They simply couldn't withstand the reality. Your vibe reflects it. And that's the actual reason they departed. Betrayed you or sought to ruin your name. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your brightness made it hard for them to keep lying. You didn't expose them to be petty. Your soul simply refused to lie for them. Number 6, you're unkillable since you're not on their time frame. They've been attempting to maneuver against you like you're just another piece on the board. Someone they can corner, trap, or exterminate. But what they haven't grasped is that you're not even playing the same game while they're caught in earthly cycles, concerned with power moves and transient gains. You're going according to a heavenly pattern that reaches far beyond what they can perceive. That's why none of their tactics succeed. You don't react as they anticipate, and you don't collapse under the pressure they believe should ruin you, since your path isn't governed by fear, manipulation, or death threats. It's controlled by purpose. Your life isn't simply about this lifetime. You came here with soul-level instructions, spiritual agreements, and heavenly safeguards that can't be hacked, halted, or broken. That's why every effort to take you out simply makes you more impenetrable, even when it appears like you've been vanquished. Something greater in you activates. It's like your soul remembers the objective, and instead of breaking you, improve. It puzzles them. It annoys them, because what sort of person survives? Betrayal, setups, death spells, and loss, and yet continues rising with greater strength, more clarity, and more favor. A chosen one who isn't limited to the constraints of this time frame. That's who. What they don't grasp is that your life isn't occurring by coincidence. There are times inscribed into your destiny that must happen, and no assault, spiritual or physical, can stop it. You're here for effect, not popularity. You're on a heavenly clock, not man's calendar. And because of that, your expiry date isn't something they can pick. Even if they touch the body, they can't touch the assignment. Your spirit doesn't work on panic. It works on prophecy. That's why even your lowest periods are loaded with signals, synchronicities, and abrupt reversals. You're part of a divine design that develops throughout dimensions. So while they're stuck believing they won, you've already gone into the next phase of your mission stronger, smarter, and even more deadly to darkness than before. They can't kill what isn't designed to perish. And you're here till the task is complete. Not a second before number 7. They couldn't own what was never theirs to touch. They imagined they could steal what was yours and keep it like it would work. The same manner for them. They believed your blessings were merely objects. Just a connection, a title, bank account, a platform, an idea. They never knew those traits were related to your mission, not simply your personality. You weren't simply someone with good fortune. You were someone walking under a heavenly anointing. That implies whatever related to you was spiritually tuned to your task. It wasn't theirs to touch, much alone take. They moved like burglars. But what they touched wasn't ordinary. It was sacrosanct. And when something precious is stolen by force or dishonesty, it doesn't remain blessed. It begins to decay. That's why their triumph didn't endure. That's why the relationship they hijacked went apart. Why the job opportunity they prevented became a problem. Why the energy they took from you never made them feel full. It exhausted them even more since what they took had heavenly fingerprints, and everything divine rejects false ownership. They didn't merely go over a line with you. They went too far with the source. And source doesn't mess around with the ships it chooses. They thought you were just another person they could trick, outsmart, or replace. But they weren't dealing with someone who got their job through connections. They were dealing with someone positioned by divine purpose. You were assigned, not appointed by men. You were ridiculed, not handled. And it makes all the difference. Your birthright, your spiritual talents, your favor. Those aren't something that can be transferred like property. They're etched into your entire existence. That's why when they attempted to carry what belonged to you, it fought back. It grew heavy. It began exposing them. And finally, it began destroying them from the inside out. You weren't only picked to receive. You were picked to carry. And only you could bear it because only you were anointed for it. That's why they couldn't hold it. That's why it slipped past their grasp. That's why no matter how far they went with what they stole, it never yielded fruit. They didn't simply steal. They mistreated something holy. And now they're paying a price they never saw coming. Number 8. The Coven is scared because they've seen the reversal begin. They're not watching you anymore to figure out how to stop you. They already know they can't. What they're doing now is watching for signs of their own collapse. That's the shift. At first, they were tracking your steps to try and derail you. Now they're silently panicking, monitoring everything about you not to strike, but to see how much time they have left before everything they sent out starts crashing back in. That's what has them terrified. The reversal has already started. The curses, the lies, the sabotage, they didn't just disappear. They circled back. And because you're still here, still breathing, still growing, that's proof enough that divine justice is now in motion. The same energy they try to bury you with is now scheduled to dig them up, expose them, and dismantle the entire system they use to control others. They can feel it. That creeping impression that nothing is operating as it used to. The ceremonies are uninteresting. The manipulation no longer lands. The favor they took from you is drying up because the instant you began healing, forgiving, aligning, and living in clarity, you triggered spiritual laws that can't be undone. You were the living reminder that heaven doesn't forget, even if man attempts to erase it. You don't even have to raise a hand. Just your existence has become a countdown. They know what they did. They recall the lengths they went to in secrecy, the individuals they recruited against you, the spiritual commitments they breached to attempt to impede your journey. And now they're tracking your development. Not out of jealousy, but out of fear. Every breakthrough you encounter is a sign that the balance is tilting and their time is running out. You possess the type of anointing that doesn't scream vengeance, but it delivers it quietly, strategically, righteously. The energy you possess walks into places and affects atmospheres. It bears responsibility without having words. And the Coven knows it. That's why they're terrified. Because you're no longer their goal. You've become the proof that their judgment is already beginning. Number 9. You are the debt collector for your lineage. You didn't merely arrive here in this lifetime to perform better or break family curses. You arrive here with an assignment inscribed in the screams, prayers, and wordless anguish of those who came before you. Your presence isn't random. It's ancient justice clothed in flesh. You were the one your lineage sent forth to pay the score. The karma they wanted to escape. You came to confront it straight on. The reality they sought to bury. You come to dig it up and utter it openly. The benefits that were hijacked, redirected, or spiritually sealed away. You come to recover them with interest. You don't only bear your own suffering. You carry recollection, profound spiritual memory. Things you never seen firsthand still exist in your bones. You sense the weight of things. No one spoke about the abuse, the betrayals, the rituals, the manipulation. Not because you're imagining it, but because your soul comes packed with a blueprint of what has to be addressed, broken, and reversed. And that's precisely why the Covenant shook. They've spent decades keeping your lineage spiritually enslaved. But now you've turned up as the debt collector. You're not furious without cause. You're not isolated by mistake. You're not waking up to this war arbitrarily. Everything happens to you as part of the divine recalibration. You're the pure soul they never saw coming. The one who wouldn't bend to the dysfunction. The one who can't be seduced by surface-level success. The one who remembers. And your memory alone is harmful because it threatens to erase generations of lives. The spiritual systems that used to overwhelm your forefathers are falling because of you. You're not only stepping away from past routines, you're ripping them out at the root. You're forcing generational spirits to panic, ancestral oppressors to lose power, and long-standing curses to expire, all by standing in truth, in power, and in your divine authority. You are not a black sheep. You are a heavenly enforcer, and your existence is the solution to a long-existing spiritual obligation. Your forebears couldn't gather themselves. You are the reckoning. You are the restoration. And the Coven knows they've never dealt with a soul like yours before. Number 10. They can't kill what comes to fulfill a task. You weren't created only to survive, blend in, or drift through life undetected. Your arrival was a disturbance. Your birth wasn't merely celebrated in the tangible. It generated a spiritual panic. Because in the invisible regions, your spirit didn't come softly. It arrived bringing unfinished business, heavenly tasks, and codes that would demolish all that had been keeping your lineage and others in bondage. That's why they came for you. So early. That's why you were targeted before you even knew your own identity. Because the dark realms sensed what you carried even when you didn't. They didn't fear you simply because you were picked. They dreaded you because you came to fulfill what others before you couldn't. You came to close doors that had been open for centuries. You came to halt cycles that nourished off anguish, silence, and dishonesty. You arrived with contracts that demand settlement. And that resolution requires exposing, uprooting, and removing all that no longer serves divine truth. And here's what makes you absolutely unkillable. You're not here for fame, recognition, or comfort. You're here to fulfill. That makes you dangerous in a manner they can't control. Most people can be bought, diverted, or silenced, but not you. You feel the task in your bones. Even when you attempted to stop, something deeper kept drawing you back. That wasn't stubbornness. That was your soul, refusing to let you terminate a heavenly timeline. The instant you started awaken, the countdown in the spirit quickened. Because with every step you take toward purpose, you closed gates the adversary believed would stay open forever. You disturb patterns in families, communities, institutions merely by refusing to play along. That's why they couldn't end you. That's why, despite every assault, breakdown, and betrayal, you're still here, and more focused than ever. You're not only living, you're fulfilling predictions. Every breath you take is a danger to the systems created to conceal truth. You are a walking expiry date for strongholds. That's why you intimidate people without trying. They can't kill what was sent to accomplish. You're not merely fulfilling an assignment. You are the mission number. Your energy signature is their lockout code. There's something about your vibe that they can't bypass. No matter how many rituals they do, no matter how frequently they monitor, No matter how proficient they are in dark arts, your frequency doesn't only resist evil. It repels access. You're not protected on a surface level. Hope for the best type of manner. You're safeguarded with godly encryption. Your soul has been stamped, sealed, and spiritually firewalled. You're basically programmed to cause disruption when anything impure attempts to enter your field. That's why when they attempt to astral travel to spy Siphon or sow havoc, they meet a block. Their connection is terminated mid-procedure. They don't know what struck them, but it leaves them depleted, bewildered, and in some instances spiritually harmed. Because your field doesn't allow filthy frequencies to attach, their vibration can't live in your presence for long without reaction. You're not only spiritually resistive, you're spiritually explosive to them. This isn't anything you learned. You were born with this. Your energy signature is special, like a celestial fingerprint. The higher worlds are aware of you. Angelic forces may see your frequency like a beacon. The lesser forces do too, but for a very different reason. To them, you're a system, a stake, a firewall, a force that causes shutdowns and reversals simply by existing. That's why, no matter how hard they attempt to tap in, influence your dreams, alter your emotions, or invade your aura, they get fried. It's not that you're arrogant. It's not that you believe you're untouchable. It's that you were spiritually whitelisted by divine intelligence, approved to travel a precise path that no evil is permitted to hijack. This isn't ego. This is spiritual infrastructure, and they know it. You stroll into rooms, and their rituals fall hollow. You enter gaps, and their spell work loses power. You speak truth, and their projections reflect back. Not because you're battling, but because your energy alone creates a type of lockdown. They've tried everything, monitoring spirits, soul links, infiltration efforts, but they keep being refused and not just denied. Shut out forever, since your field wasn't only safeguarded. It was pre-programmed to be unavailable to anything misaligned with divine order. They can't decode you. They can't invade your space. Your frequency is the lock, and they've already misplaced the key. Number. They attempted to tie you, but you're a living gateway. They felt if they could bound you with word curses, spiritual contracts, emotional traps, or mental warfare, you would break down, shut up, and remain little. But they miscalculated who they were dealing with. You're not merely a soul striving to withstand spiritual onslaught. You are a living doorway, an open conduit of heavenly progress. When they attempted to cage you, they ignited something they didn't even believe in. Transform emotion on a spiritual level, so profound it reversed their intents and converted restrictions into launching pads. They put effort into halting your voice, restricting your possibilities, keeping you locked in uncertainty or cycles of guilt. But every time they did, your soul alchemical it, you convert their darkness into insight, their treachery into limits, their delays into spiritual acceleration. That's what makes you distinct. You don't simply bounce back, you upgrade. Every effort to confine you ends up pushing you more into harmony. They thought that tying you meant confining you. But what they didn't comprehend is that you're programmed to grow. You're not made to fit inside boxes. You were sent to crack them open. That's why their spells backfired. That's why every rite designed to mute you just intensified your voice. That's why what was intended to make you quit made you invincible. You took the cage and fashioned a stairway out of it. Because you don't merely carry heavenly energy. You embody divine technology. Your system is wired for transformation. When darkness penetrates your field, it doesn't remain as it was. It's filtered, flipped, and changed. The suffering creates knowledge. The loss becomes clarity. The barrier becomes a breakthrough. And this is what they weren't ready for. The more they attempted to stop you, the more they helped you grow. Their ceremonies always worked. They became your place to train. You didn't merely live. You opened up new areas of power. They never intended for you to touch, but they gave you the keys without realizing it. They sought to seal a gateway. They didn't know you are the doorway. Every strike only opened another gate, and you strolled right through it. Number. They dread your arrest much more than your wrath. They don't actually fear your rage. Rage is loud, emotive, reactionary, and they know how to provoke that. They've dealt with that type of intensity before. But your rest, that's what unsettles them. Because when a selected one enters rest, not only slumber, but spiritual calm. You're not shutting down. You're charging up. Your quiet doesn't indicate capitulation. It signifies strategy. And they know that as they're expending energy, attempting to hex, monitor, or control your every action, you're in a condition of heavenly reset. You're not responding to their games because you've stepped out of their frequency. You're letting heavenly intelligence rewire your future face. Stillness is your battleground, and they can't trace it. They don't know what's occurring within you. And it worries them more than anything you could ever say out loud. Because rest for a chosen one is not sloth. It's alignment. It's when heaven drops updates into your spirit. Ideas, cautions, methods, safeguards, improvements. They all come through when you're calm enough to accept. That's why the opponent fights your slumber more than anything else. That's why they deliver turmoil before your breakthrough diversions, before your peace and drama. When you're on the edge of clarity, they know that every time you totally rest, you return with better sight, heavier anointing, and more accurate execution. You don't rest like the ordinary individual. When you draw back, you tap into worlds others can't access. Your body may be motionless, but your soul is in council with higher planes. That's why they watch you so intently when you go silent, not because they believe you've given up, but because they know you're becoming dangerous again. They've seen the pattern every time they believe they've worn you out. You vanish and return stronger, calmer, more focused, more aligned. That rhythm worries them because they can't disrupt something they can't reach. They can't snoop on your downloads. They can't prevent divine timing. And they can't stop what's being triggered when you're resting in your holy space of restoration. You don't roar. You recharge. And as you stand, they sense the change before you speak a word. Number their actual dread. You're the seed that reveals the entire plantation. They assumed you were simply another target, someone they might utilize, silence and discard as they've done to so many before you. But you were different. You didn't remain broken. You didn't disappear in shame. You healed in public. You rose in truth. And in doing so, you become the one thing they never wanted to deal with. Proof. Living, breathing. Undeniable evidence that their system is founded on lies, abuse, manipulation, and terror. What worries them isn't only your survival. It's that you're prospering despite all they threw at you. Your resilience isn't silent. It says volumes. It claims this didn't ruin me, and now I'm going to speak the truth about it. That alone makes you more deadly than warriors. Because they can't delete you. They can't gaslight you into quiet. They can't persuade the world you're insane. Not when your whole existence now resonates with clarity, congruence, and purpose. You weren't the only one they wounded. You weren't the only one. They attempted to bond silence or erase. But you were the one who survived to speak about it. And that's what makes you the seed that threatens to bring down the whole plantation. Because others are watching you. Because of you, others are waking up. People can see through their tricks since your life shows them the plan. Your presence alone brings out the gloom in rooms without you having to say a word. Your healing goes against everything they designed to prevent people from getting out. You were expected to fade, break down, or get bitter. But instead, you've become the proof that everything they constructed was never as strong as they promised it was. You're not merely a survivor. You're a spotlight. And here's the truth. They don't want revealed. If you made it out, others can too. If you recovered your voice, so can the rest. Your life isn't simply a comeback. It's a chain reaction. Every step you take in freedom dismantles whatever they built on concealment. And the more you shine, the more their entire system begins to implode. You were never supposed to remain buried. You were planted to grow. And now you're unearthing every rotting root they attempted to conceal. Let them watch. Let them scurry. Let them speak in circles, trying to figure out how you're still rising. After all they did to bury you. Because the reality is, you were never simply a survivor. You were the spiritual abnormality that they couldn't foresee. The heavenly fault in their generational scheme of control. And now you're the proof that all their power was stolen, all their control was illusion, and all their ceremonies were helpless against actual heavenly authority. You didn't merely stop the cycle. You revealed it. You stepped through the fire they set for. And instead of burning to ash, you were flame resistant. Your presence today is prophetic. Every breath you take, every boundary you create, every truth you express is a signal that their dominion is ended. You are the heavenly audit they never saw coming. The corporeal answer to the prayers of your ancestors, and the nightmare to every evil entity who gambled on your quiet. The Coven is afraid. The system is disintegrating. The watching have become the watched. Why? Because your goal is too magnificent to perish, too coded, to be hacked and to sacrosanct, to be touched by the dirty. You weren't merely picked. You were approved. What they attempted to steal will return doubled. What they sought to silence will resound louder. What they intended to demolish will now be the basis for others to rise from. This is your confirmation. You are not broken. You are built. You are here to end cycles, reclaim legacies, and activate others just by strolling. In truth, your mere existence is unsettling realities, and the ones who attempted to stop you, they will have no option but to watch you execute the assignment they dreaded the most. Now is your chance, not only to shine, but to shake the roots of every structure that believed you wouldn't make it. You are the storm. They can't escape the reality. They can't quiet, and the light they can't extinguish. If this message impacted your spirit, if it validated what you already felt deep in your soul, then don't simply scroll past. This is your tribe. This is your moment. Make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. Don't wait, because every video here is filled with the clarity, confirmation, and spiritual fire they don't want you to hear. Like this video to keep this message moving through the algorithm. Because truth deserves to go viral. Leave a remark below and let them know I'm not merely picked. I am the opposite. Say it. Say it. Let your voice cut through the quiet. They attempted to keep you inside. And most importantly, tell someone else who's getting better about this. Someone who has to keep track. They aren't insane. They get called. We're doing more than just getting people to watch. We're starting a movement. Welcome to the front lines. You're not alone anymore.